Hello, and let's jump into making a folded leaf peyote pendant. I have chosen a design which has a width of 5 beads, and for this I would need to have a base unit where I have 2 beads of each color. Then I will pull them together into a knot. Then put the needle through 2 beads of the same color and 8 beads of the color that the needle just came out of, plus 8 beads of your secondary color. So in total on this string, in addition to the base unit, would be 8 beads of color 1 and 8 beads of color 2. Alright, and now thread 1 bead into color 1, which is the gray, to pull it all together and come out from the base unit color 2, so in my case beige, like so. And now we have established the first row of each side. And now you start basically peyote stitch on both sides. So basically zigzag by skipping 1 bead, like so. And once you reach in the breaking point of 2 colors, that is where you increase. So on the folded leaf, this is basically the inner edge or the outer edge, depending on which side you're on. So now I take, instead of 1 bead, 2 beads and enter into the gray one there. So it would look like this. And then the usual 1 bead each to the beginning. And you go back into the base unit, the same path you followed before, with the difference that you now also go through one of the beige ones. There, first 2 rows are done. Now for the next one, again the peyote, and here you can already slowly see the direction in which the pendant starts to grow. So we basically shift everything upwards by 1 bead each row. Now we increase, so pick up 2 beads of each color and back with the gray. And now with this last bead, we start pulling the 2 sides together. So you push the 2 sides together and connect the beads of each row. So you start going upwards. And then you basically go in the parallel beige bead plus 1 extra one to shift the work upwards. So now you can see we have made this 1 unit, which on the pendant will be that row in essence. And from now on it will be identical peyote stitch, shifting upwards by 1 bead. So I will do 1 extra circuit for demonstration. Now 1 bead each for the increase. And I usually flip my work. See there. Whoops! That tends to happen sometimes. Alright, and you pull two sides together now with the parallel bead of color 2 and plus 1 bead. There we go. Now just continue working in this manner. Peyote stitch, shifting up by 1 bead, so you increase at the top. I'll show you one more round. The goal here is to essentially bead one side of a V shape, so that this one side would have enough material to create this fold effect. Usually around between 20 and 25 rows, depending on the beads that you use. So after this final gray bead, I will fast forward to the point where I have 20 beads on one side. Alright, now we have done the peyote for 20 rows, and in my case it was sufficient to create the folded effect on one side already. So I am ready to make the final row, which will be the middle, or actually top tip, in which I also want to incorporate the jump ring. I have jump rings with no opening, so I like to actually put them into the beadwork while I'm doing them already, so that I have a secure way of making them into anything I want. To start with, you do everything normally, so I go down with the beige beads. And while I usually would take just a beige and a grey bead to increase, I now put the jump ring in between. Just to show, these jump rings have no opening. I don't know how well it is visible on the video, but I really like using them in my beadwork, so I don't have to worry about the thread coming out from a crack. There you go, and the jump ring is now in between the beads. Then go back up with the grey beads to the center point of the inner edge. Right, so you have now decided that you need to go back up to create the V shape. I prefer to start actually adding beads from the other side. So what I usually do is that I just go back down again without adding any beads. So just follow the beads, go through the jump ring and the first bead from the other side as well. And now we start to build the shape upwards from the other side. So you take one by one the secondary color, and you go into the center, and this is where you now start increasing the same way as before, but simply in the other direction. So you pick up a gray bead and a beige bead, and the thread goes into the top side in the beige. There. And this basically sets the premises for starting the increase in the other side. Flip the work to continue the other side. Go into the very tip again. So in total the beads should be large enough to allow 3 times thread plus needle to go through them. and then gray plus 1. So now you can see that you start shifting the peyote in the other direction, back up. Now increase. Hopefully the pattern is becoming clearer at this point. Flip, go back down again. Alright, at this point you should now continue working, building up the peyote stitch on the other side, shifting upwards so that you have roughly the same material or length as on the left side, and that you would be able to make the fold comfortably. Alright, now I have completed the other side as well. It's very important to calculate the rows to make sure that you can connect the V shape correctly for a symmetrical leaf. One side should be shortened by 1 bead. In my case, I have 21 rows on the left side and 20 on the right side. This allows the beads to line up perfectly in the way that we need them. Also at this point you should now decide which way the pendant is folded and which color will be the inside and the outside. So right now the gray would be on both sides on the outside. If I do it the other way, it would be the beige color outside both ways. It's a bit hard to show on the big beads, yeah, like so. In my case I want to have the gray on the outside. So I'll just final test if it lines up. Yes. So the left side is shorter by 1 row, which is why I place it lower as well. And it should line up like this to complement the left side, which is 21 rows, 1 higher. If you don't see this line up, then definitely count the rows that you have and make sure that 1 row is higher by 1. Then the thread should exit like that, and I'm basically lining the rows up now to see where I need to go into for the complementation. It's very important to keep tension while you do this, so that's the bead where I need to make the connection between the 2 folds. Like so. And now I just continue doing the zigzag, carefully picking the beads on either side to pull the two sides together, like that. Remember to keep tension. You would not want to have a flimsy connection here because it will be visible later on. And one from here. That, and now we are moving on to the tip. So going to the very tip. This in my case will be the lower tip because I have the pendant hook on the other side, if you remember. And first side is done. Then flip the work. It's natural for this side to be more crumpled since it's the inner side, but definitely still doable. So just carefully carry out the peyote zigzag to see which side is which. There, oops. Ignore that part, going back up again. So there is the right bead. And just continue until you all the way to the middle again. If you see at this point that something is just not right, then definitely count your rows from the center up 1, 2, 3 row, etc., and make sure that one side is lower or higher by one bead, because only then the leaf sides can complement each other. So you can't force two equal row peyote sides to work together. In my case it's 21 and 20, so it works out quite nicely. And the final beige one right over there. Then put the thread through the middle on the other side to make the final connection. So this thread now should go into the gray bead, the last connection that hasn't been reinforced yet. And we are done! There is your pendant, earring, or whatever your heart desires. For reinforcement, I just usually go through the pattern one more time to make sure that the strategic parts are reinforced.